Live from the sun-drenched cobblestones of the Eternal City, conversations crossing faith, culture, and current events. Civil discourse, civil debate, and the free exchange of ideas. This is Intersections with Bree Dail and Joey Meugniot. And now your hosts, Bree and Joey.
Good morning, good morning. It's been a while since we've been on. This is Intersections with Bree Dail and Joey Meugniot. I am Joey Meugniot. It's been a while, so we'll introduce ourselves again, but I'm an analyst and small business consultant, former Army veteran, and I'm joined with Bree. So Bree, why don't you jump in and update everybody on your byline here real quick?
Right. So I'm an internationally accredited journalist, including accreditation for the Holy See, as the Rome correspondent for the Epoch Times. And I'm also a contributor to many Catholic outlets, Catholic Herald and others. And you can find me on those outlets as well as here on GRN. And I'm just pleased to be coming back after, I guess it's been 2 weeks, Joey.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a lot longer than that, but I think it has actually been 2 weeks. It feels like it's been a month since we've been on, and a lot has happened. I know the last time we spoke, I was telling people to watch the Euro 2020, and then Italy won, which was amazing. My adopted country, and Adrian, our producer. I'm still a veteran. I'm just former Army. I'm also still a veteran, but yeah. So there you go. Thanks for clarifying that, Adrian. So there's a lot has happened. There's been a ton of news that's been going on. There's news out of the Vatican. There's some secular news. We've got a lot to kind of go over and catch up on. So I think first we're going to jump into some of the more, normally what we do is we break the show down into 3 segments. We do news impacting faith, current events, and then culture. But we're going to flip it on you this time. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the secular stuff so that we can spend more time if we need to on some of the faith news that has been going on over the last week or so, more basically this week. So to do that, I'll throw it back over to Bree. We're going to talk about some secular stuff. So what are some interesting things that have been going on in the last 2 weeks, Bree?
Wow, interesting things in the last 2 weeks. Well, I'm just thinking of today, Joey, because we had, it's Monday morning. So, of course, we've got stories that are coming out over the weekend. And I always talk about, secular sourcing is always take it with a grain of salt. Ensure that you are double checking, triple checking your sourcing, because a lot of the secular press, as we know, have been involved with a lot of disinformation. But I think it's really interesting what we're seeing right now in out of The Guardian. And Joey, I tweeted it out this morning. 2 big stories in the making right now. One is, and if you haven't been really following the press conferences out of Washington, D.C., out of the White House, it can be a bit, boring, circle back and all of that. But we had over the last week, the press secretary, Jen Psaki, she actually came out and said that there was a list of 12 people who were identified as like kind of the instigators, the foundation pieces for a lot of the, quote, disinformation coming out with regards to the vaccine and COVID and all of that, which is great. I mean, it's important to identify who people are who are pushing out disinformation. But this is coming out of the White House, and she wasn't specific. So there was a lot of speculation, which you don't want. You never want speculation. You want facts, provide the evidence and then let people decide. But that wasn't the case with Jen Psaki, because we do know that when it comes to press secretaries, whether one side or the other, Joey, they're there to kind of spin, right? So what happened this today was that The Guardian came out with a list of 12 coming from an NGO. They call themselves an NGO. And it's what was the name of the council or the Center for help me out, Joey.
The Center for Countering Hate, is it?
Yeah, a Center for Countering online hate or something, cyber hate, something to that effect. But this particular group was
here you go. The Center for Countering Digital Hate. There we go.
There you go. Digital
get it right.
hate. Yeah.
CCDH.
H. So I did some digging. Who are these people? Because they came out with this big report, and it's identifying. It's like names, right? So I'm thinking, like, looking at how defamation lawsuits take place in very easily in the UK. This is coming out of the Guardian. I'm thinking to myself, okay, who are these people who are coming out with this long report naming names, right? And Joey, I wasn't able to find anything. I found that they're registered both in the United States in Washington, D.C., but have not filed any documentation on their funding with GuideStar, for example, which monitors nonprofits and NGOs. And then did a little bit more digging and saw that they did a GoFundMe, which was very strange, and they didn't meet their goal. And then that's it. So they don't have any really identifiers of who's funding them, who funded this large document, which we have to say is being assessed as being the document that the White House is relying on. So Joey, what are your thoughts on this? Because it's a lot. It's coming out of the media, but it has specifics and it's naming names. You know, this is a document that we have in hand now, and it's identifying people. What are your thoughts?
So there's a couple things. So one, we're kind of drawing some conclusions, drawing some connections, I guess, by saying, you know, there's 12 names. They also happen to put out the next, or, you know, within a few days, a list of 12. Like we're connecting some dots there.
We're asking the questions.
And we're saying, hey, is this the list, right? So is this the list? There's 12 names. You said there's 12 people. And the thing that she had said at the press conference was that, and her being Jen Psaki, was that if you are banned on one, you should be banned on all of them. That's kind of the premise that they're running with.
Social media ban.
Yeah. If you're banned on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, you should be banned on all of them. Now, what's interesting is that some of the names on this list, and we'll put a link somewhere, Adrian, or we can take care of that, David or somebody. We'll put a link in either the chat or the description after the fact. But you can see the list. Some of them are banned on some social medias already. Some aren't at all. And it's interesting. And if you remember back, was the big thing to me. If you remember back a year, maybe 18 months, 2 years ago or so, former President Donald Trump, because I don't want to get a strike on the channel. So what he said was, sorry, I muted myself. Let me get the mouse away. So what he said is that they're not coming after me. They're coming after you. And if they can do it to me, they can do it to you. So now here you have 12 essentially private figures, private citizens, and they're going after these people now too. And he said that, you know, they said they're coming after me. President Trump said they're coming after me, but they're really coming after you. And this is just what it is. If you don't say the things that they want you to say, or you have an opinion that is different from the official narrative, the official opinion of the media, of whomever wants to control what's going on.
WHO.
There is no, you cannot differentiate yourself via opinion. There's no reason to even say anything else.
But Joey, that counters what I just had, you know, two press conferences ago. Actually it was the last press conference I went to that focused on disinformation, this actual thing, coming out of the World Medical Association, combining its engagement, this big online conference with the Vatican, where I'm going to be having an article coming out on this from Epoch Times. It's been a little slow, but we want to get it right, you know. But I asked the leadership, are you willing to sit down with people from the opposite side, credible medical experts at this point? Because it's the only way you really are going to get rid of disinformation. Because if there is an operations that is seen as, hey, we're going to mute anybody who has a differing opinion, and this coming from the government, you know, which we're seeing, when that happens, then conspiracy theory will take place, because people are like, see, the government is shutting down. Even if the government was right on this, right? You still want to have that open civil debate, because in reality, especially with the scientific method, as this is ongoing research. They're looking at what is happening and in the effects of the vaccine. This is ongoing medical research. So it is important to hear the other side debate the ones who have the narrative right now. And I think that's worrisome, that they're not willing to do that. Now, I have no opinion on this. Well, I have some opinion because I'm a human being, but I'm not a medical doctor.
No,
so
Bree, you're not allowed to have an opinion. That was your mistake. See, it's not how it works.
Yeah,
you're already
really,
off. You're already off script.
not
Sorry,
allowed.
folks. Already off script.
But one of the things that I would like to do is I would like to learn. I'd like to be informed. And I think these polarized areas of shutting the other side down actually causes one to just be like, I don't believe either. So now where are we at? Because one side is completely delegitimizing the other instead of having open debate. I think it would be interesting to hear two well-known, credible, medical and scientific experts on the polar opposite debate one another. It would be interesting to hear, I think. And the Vatican has said that their next conference, Joey, is going to allow that. So I am interested in hearing from people, viewers, listeners right now. Who would you say needs to be at the cream of, we're talking cream of the crop. Who do I need to contact to then bring that name to Archbishop Paglia? Because Archbishop Paglia has made it a declaration that he's going to be supporting this. So who are those names? Because we have the World Medical Association on one side. So who are the names, the top scientists who are discrediting the World Medical Association? And that's why I'm saying this report is just, it's concerning because it's ongoing, what it looks like is ongoing disinformation operations and propaganda coming from the government, and the media is going along with it.
Well, they're trying to tell, I mean, there's a lot to this, but basically what they're saying is that if you say anything that differs from what we want you to say, the government will work hand in hand with social media companies and the larger media apparatus in silencing you.
Right.
So that's what should concern people. That's the takeaway from all of this, is that's not something that we're familiar with happening, at least in the United States. And so that's why it kind of the gut punch, really. You're like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. Why would our own government be trying to do that?
Huh.
Why indeed? Why indeed?
Has it happened before? I mean, that's when we start to look at the past, right? Has it happened before? I saw a really interesting quote the other day, and I've used it a few times now too, but it wasn't really a quote, it's more of a saying. Everybody says like history repeats itself. And I used to be like, oh, okay, yeah, it does. But so somebody the other day corrected me and they said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. So yeah, it'll feel and seem similar. It won't be exactly the same, but enough will have happened for you to be like, wait a minute, this doesn't seem quite right. It kind of reminds me of this. And that's why, when drawing historical comparisons, oftentimes it gets, the conversation becomes a comparison and not the actual act that's happening. Right. We find that in politics a lot. We end up talking about, no, you can't compare that to that or this to that. And you're like, no, that's not we're not talking about the comparison. We're just talking about like something that's similar. It's an example of where something like this happened before. Anyway, so, and that's good to talk about, government overreach, and awesome segue. Is there's been a lot of protests in, so not to bury the lead, but Cuba has been all over the news. So there's a lot of things going on in Cuba right now, and the media has been relatively silent on it. I would say a majority of political office holders have said something, not exactly the direction you'd think they'd go, and some have come out very strongly in support of the Cuban people, which they should. Others have tried to blame the United States and Donald Trump for what's going on there. Why
not? For seeming to forget that the communist regime in Cuba is really who's responsible for all of this and has been for decades. So it's interesting to see that there's the two reactions from both sides of the aisle on that one. And there's a lot. And the interesting thing, and this is where I was curious to talk to you a little bit about it, was that the religious aspects, but I think we're coming up on our break. Yeah, we are. So coming up on our break. So I will get back to that question after the break, and we will come back around on it. Yeah, there you go. We'll catch you after the break.
Christians are often accused of bigotry for opposing the homosexual lifestyle, but such a charge is unfounded. First, the charge wrongly defines bigotry as having a negative opinion about a behavior. Bigotry is having a negative opinion based on emotion rather than reason, unwilling to give a fair hearing to opposing views, and engaging in invective rather than reasoned debate. Mere opposition to sexual activity among members of the same sex doesn't fit that bill. Second, the objection fails to distinguish between negative opinions about a practice and negative opinions about a person. A negative judgment on homosexual behavior no more implies a negative view of the people involved than a negative judgment on any other type of immoral behavior. So to my Christian friends I say, fear not, and continue to stand strong. You're not a bigot for opposing homosexual behavior. I'm Carlo Broussard with a ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
We all know children have a natural innocence and a sense of wonder. Yet our world is full of distractions that can pull families in the wrong direction. But with the help of God and a church family, your children can grow in the security of faith, hope, and love. Weekly Mass provides that critical faith foundation needed in life. So if your family hasn't been to Mass in a while, we'd like to invite you home. Discover more at CatholicsComeHome.org.
And welcome back to Intersections with Bree Dail and Joey Meugniot. Sorry for the awkward send-off. I guess we're a bit rusty on that one. That's my fault. I had to, again, Joe McLean myself off the radio real quick so that we didn't run into our break. So apologies for that. So, what we were talking about, the first segment was just really kind of starting to get an idea of some of the things that are going on in the secular world, some of the political things that have been going on, which led us interestingly into Cuba. So what I thought was interesting about Cuba, and this is what right where we got cut off, was really the religious aspect of it. A lot of Cubans are Catholic, and what I find interesting about that is how, even though for generations now, for at least 2-3-ish generations or so, they've lived under a communist regime, a very strong communist regime that controls most aspects or all aspects of their lives. There's still actually a faith there and a Catholic faith there that is relatively strong, so much so that they're leaning into that faith now to try and get them through some of these protests and things, these anti-democracy things that are happening there. And what did you think about that, Bree?
It's funny because when you see these governments, Myanmar, Cuba, what we've seen in China, the real persecution that these people have undergone in order to maintain their faith and their freedom, it always comes to head because logic and reason drives you towards freedom. It doesn't drive you towards, a subsistence, becoming a cog in the machine. The value of the human person is recognized in that way. And so I find it really interesting. We saw the Cuban people rallying around an image of Our Lady that is recognized as the patroness of Cuba. And they were crying out, libertad, libertad, like they want liberty. I found it inspiring. But, Joey, this past week during the Angelus, it was the first Angelus that Pope Francis was back in the Vatican for. After his surgery, there was a large group of Cuban nationals who were out in the square, and they were waiting for potentially Pope Francis to make a statement on Cuba, and he did. And it was in support and offering prayers and whatnot. But, Joey, every time I hear these things and it's appropriate, it needs to happen. He offered prayers for people who are victims of flooding in Germany. He offered, there's ongoing suffering going on in South Africa that no one's talking about right now. But every time I hear these things, I get a twinge because, my favorite topic is to bring up China and Hong Kong. And it's just, it's so suffering. It causes me suffering to see that they've been pretty much ignored and abandoned. And I just, as someone, just as a Catholic now speaking, I just hope that our listeners are praying and continuing to pray for Cardinal Zen for those in Hong Kong and in China, mainland China, because things are getting tough, and we know this. It's getting tough and we're going to be talking about this in the Western Church right now in a different way. But when you consider the suffering, we're talking physical suffering, not even being able to go to mass. Like, this is what the Cuban people are fighting for. This is what the people in Hong Kong have been fighting for. This is what people who want liberty recognize, the absolute necessity of the faith. It's part of who we are, and it's the hardest thing to change. It is one of the things that the Russians spoke about when it came to, corrupting people towards, communism, was that, and it's the reason why Lenin called religion the opiate of the masses, because he realized that religion and ideology, it's so hard to change. People will die for that. That's why the Chinese were always so afraid of what the church would do, because the underground church was so vibrant in China. And it was undermining the very foundation of communism, which says that you are an asset of the state, whereas religion, especially Catholicism, it endorses the whole idea of the dignity of the human person. And it was highlighted greatly by John Paul II, right? So, John Paul II, he was the one to really push the whole aspect of dignity of the human person. So I think that we have to kind of take things in and continue to pray, but it is interesting to see how that crossing between religion, just like we've said with intersections, religion and politics, they go hand in hand. The morality of the people, it goes hand in hand. And I think we need to see more support from the United States, especially because we have such a large Cuban refugee population. So that's my take. That's my hot take, Joey.
Well, there would be more Cuban refugees, but the Department of Homeland Security said that they are going to be they're going to regift them basically to a third country that isn't the United States. And I said jokingly that they should just claim they're fleeing climate change and not communism, and then they'd probably get welcomed in with open arms, because that's how it works in the United States now.
Wow.
Communism, not bad. Climate change, the worst thing in recorded human history. So that's I think all people deserve the right to self-determination and equality of opportunity. And I think really that's just what the Cuban people have been crying out for decades now. I think it's coming to a head. I don't know where this is going to go. I certainly hope that democracy, real democracy, secure,
which has to be
safe,
made by the people, right? Because we've seen that experiment in the Middle East when, unfortunately our country thought we could impose democracy on others whose, foundations are not democratic by nature, right? And how well that's been handled. The interesting thing about democracy and about this experiment that we have with democracy is that we always assume that if you give people democracy, they'll always just kind of side with us and assume the same things that we like and do and think. And when you allow people to freely vote and choose the path that they want to do, it might not always align with the vision that the United States thought in the first place. Right.
That's just kind of the way it goes. So I do think that they have a right to self-determination and equality of opportunity. That they should be able to kind of choose their own destiny, especially the timing of all of it after the Independence Day. I really sincerely hope that more comes out of this, and we continue hearing about it. It doesn't just kind of fade away like everything else. It was a news cycle, and now we're good. Like we talked about Cuba, and so now we can move on. Having close friends of mine that are part of the Cuban community, I pay more attention to this, and I think it's going to be a long, hard fight, but I think it's definitely a time for those long conversations to be had. And I think we're past the point now of just saying, the Cuba, it's so great there. They have the best health care, there's obviously not. It's obviously not that there anymore. There's some serious and real problems going on there, and I think that it's not going to come from outside. It's going to come from inside. They're going to have to figure it out. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of third country intervention in Cuba. And I'm hoping that they seize the opportunity and the momentum and build upon it. And hopefully the Catholic Church supports those that want to, that want the same mission, when they want the same thing. So,
Right.
So, not to kind of pinwheel off that one for a minute, but you said that Pope Francis did speak about Cuba a little bit. So he also did some other things, and this is where I'm going to have to. I want you to talk a little bit about it, but I want to preface this next segment that we're going to talk about when it comes to the traditional Latin Mass, a buzzword of all buzzwords within #Catholic Twitter. Is this, but I want to say this, is that we spoke about this, it seems like a month ago now, but it's probably like 3 weeks, but we said that we quoted Cardinal Sarah and said that there's something coming, but we want to wait to see what it is before we talk about it. There is something going to happen. We don't know what it is, so we didn't want to speculate. And if you go back a couple episodes and you watch, that's exactly what we said. We wanted to wait till it came out. We wanted to see what was said. When it came to this, was it going to be what was it going to be? No one knew. There's a lot of speculation. Well, now the document's out, and so Bree, can you give us a rundown of what it is, what it means, and then we can kind of break it apart and talk about it a little bit. But now that this document is out, let's talk about it.
Yeah, so it's been quite a week, and I want to you prefaced really well, because yes, we have been saying this for a while, and both of us have a certain set of skills when it comes to understanding propaganda, disinformation, and that kind of thing. And I think it's important in this very, very heated time, whether it's in the mainstream media, which we're seeing, like, again, we are talking about this, we might hit another area of real concern for PSYOPs coming out in the news if we have time. But it's one of the things that we have seen in the reactions of this document. First is that we've seen a lot of reactions from different bishops that have been positive. And I've been trying to put out documentation to show that these are from the bishops. It's in their names. It's like signed letterhead, all of that kind of thing. But there has been a lot of so-called quotes coming from different bishops. One that circulated the Twitter sphere in the last 48 hours has been a supposed quote from Cardinal Erdoğan, who is from Hungary. He's the Archbishop in Budapest, and it was fake news, and it was tweeted out by individuals who are well respected in the community, and I was contacted by others who said, well, there's no actual, original document in the language with the seal and dated and how these things usually go. It's just this translation. That should, people have started to think, like, do you have original sources? That is the whole point of why we've discussed disinformation and propaganda, because when a push comes to shove, people have to determine for themselves the information that they're receiving is accurate. And it ended up being not accurate. And it was tweeted out by Edward Habsburg, the ambassador to the Holy See, saying, no, none of this is accurate. So it's really important to be careful. There's a lot of emotions right now involved. People are really upset. And why? So this gets to the. So
what is it called?
And
can you give us a TLDR on kind of on what it is? So there's a lot of information flowing out. So we want to circle this. Yeah. So there's a lot of information going on there. And what Bree's going to tell you now is basically what it is and what it means for you.
So to me, this says we have now seen Pope Francis establish his legacy. The legacy of Benedict XVI included, for the most part, opening up, making a motu proprio or a document, opening up to all priests, reaffirming their ability to independently, without having to find permission, all priests, saying the traditional Latin Mass if they wanted to. Now, this motu proprio, which is known as Summorum Pontificum, was propagated, but it didn't mean that there were bishops who were listening. There were many bishops who completely ignored the motu proprio and said, no, you can't have the Latin Mass in our dioceses. And we know this. People have had no opportunity to go to the traditional Latin Mass because even though there might be priests who wanted to learn, they were told no. So I want people to kind of remember that foundation, that motu proprio was not always permitted, even though it was something that Pope Benedict put out. So skip ahead. Now, Pope Francis has come out with a document saying, and a letter that's supporting this, saying, look, I have problems with the way that this community that's surrounding the traditional Latin Mass is handling themselves, their attitudes. And it seems very personal. It was very harsh, the way that he communicated this. And he's targeting a very small population of the full Catholic Church who are very, very, like, they're traditional, they're loyal to the church, they're tithing, they are growing. I mean, it's a large growing population in the United States, but it's very large in the United States and in England. Not many other places, maybe France and some others, but the most population is there. But we also have a lot of loud voices who have contradicted Pope Francis. And it seems to me, based off of his letter, that he's responding to those people, but blanketly putting out this motu proprio saying, enough is enough. We're going to now, because of these attitudes, because of this concern and their rejection, so to speak, of Vatican II, where there are people who do that. And there are people who have gone on record, well-known people who have done that. So he says, because of that, I'm now going to be putting restrictions. And so priests who want to say the traditional Latin Mass need to go to their bishop to do it. And I'm going to also say you can't say the traditional Latin Mass in a parish. So one of the things that I've seen recently from a bishop is he just has stripped the title parish from a church and allowed the church to continue. So there are ways around that the bishops now are taking involved. He also said that the bishop himself has to go to Rome to request those permissions. But from what I'm seeing from canonists, that there's wiggle room there. He says they should go to Rome, not, and like we've talked about this within instructions in the military. Yeah, the wording is really important. It's not you shall.
Shall versus must, yeah.
Yeah, right. So it seems like that's where we're going, but the reaction was just overwhelmingly negative to this. And again, because there were rumors of this document have been circulating since 2017. I mean, I recently cited a LifeSite report from 2017 that said that there was a document out there. I think that this document, and knowing kind of how it was being really protected, came from a very small group of people. They're claiming that it's based off of, or Pope Francis said in his letter, it's based off of a survey. And then there have been some reports saying, oh, well, this is what the results of the survey is. Again, we don't have any information on that. So that's coming from
a survey of him with a response rate of 1.
Like, who knows? So I have actually reached out to the press office asking for that survey, and I'm going to go. I'm going to keep bothering them about that, because the results of the survey should be transparent. Not looking for names, just looking for percentages here. Who responded? How many people did you contact? Did you contact the bishops that have been pro the traditional Latin Mass? Because that's the thing. We are seeing now the responses of the bishops, Joey, to really kind of be giving us like a clarity on who, who's been supportive of this all. And it's actually quite surprising to see the vast majority of these bishops supporting it. Now, of course, we had a bishop down in Puerto Rico that not only said no more traditional Latin Mass ever, but then he said, oh, we're going to also ban, Berettas and the Roman, the chasuble. And it's just like, where are you getting that from? So we're seeing that extreme too, but not surprising again. Your take.
I think so I think there's the reaction of the sky is falling. And there's two sides, and I think the truth, as always, is usually about
kind
somewhere
of
in the middle.
means, right?
Yeah. So there's one thing I thought was interesting is that now the bishops get to decide. So what is the ramifications for that, right? So you've got bishops that can now come out and say, and I think the ones that are super supportive are the ones that are going to be the first ones out of the gate to say yep, we love it, can't get enough of it, going to keep doing it. Now let's keep in mind, that the traditional Latin Mass for, I don't know, 1,500 years was just called Mass.
Mass.
That's just what it was. There wasn't like a multiple variations and versions. It was just like, you're going to church and this is what you're doing. That's what it was for well over 1,000 years. Like we're pushing closer to 2,000 than we are to 1,000. That's just what it was. This is what it was.
And you've been to that, like for people who are listening for the first time, Joey is still like kind of coming back to the church. He was a Lutheran, converted, is now here in Rome, is getting to get to go to all of these different liturgies. His first liturgy in the traditional Latin Mass was at Cardinal Burke's Pontifical High Mass, which throw him out into the deep end.
I was talking about sink or swim moment, really.
Right. But it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and it's reverent, and it's amazing to kind of just look around at the art and the music and the smells and bells. And it's beautiful. It's what draws a lot of people, that it's not about us, but the Mass is the Mass. And I think that's something that people have to realize. The traditional Latin Mass has not been banned. Joey, I was contacted by a Protestant friend of mine and said, I'm reading on Fox News the traditional Latin Mass has been banned. What? What's going on? I'm like, no, it's not.
Hasn't. It hasn't been. It hasn't been banned. He tried to make it more difficult, and I think really what the Pope ended up doing is you're going to start to see, well, for lack of a better term, we're going to call them battle lines. You're going to start to see the kind of camps separate. You're going to see which bishops and cardinals support the traditional Latin Mass, and which ones either are in the middle and don't mind, and which ones are just going to stay silent.
And he said this document's supposed to be unitive. That's the point.
So,
and I think that's...
There's anything but that.
Right.
You're going to see... An interesting thing is in the world in which we live now, things that are more... that make you feel like you're part of something larger, or that there's something else out there besides social media and 24-hour news cycles and this and that, and that people are going back to that. And that counterculture is now conservative... Christian conservative Western society culture. Like that's really what it starts to look like. It's kind of interesting to see that and if you would have asked somebody 100 years ago if they thought that counterculture would be conservative traditional Latin Catholic Mass, they'd looked at you like you were crazy, like you've got antlers, because that, like, it's to be rebellious is now be a conservative Catholic that goes to traditional Latin Mass. Right. All right, that's not what I had on my bingo card, but let's play, let's go. So I think that you're going to start to see some separation. You're going to start to see people coming out in favor or not. Like you've got kind of these two camps already starting to form, and you're going to have a third one that is just not going to say anything. They don't have to publicly say anything. So I think your early people are coming out in favor. Are those that support it. So I think there's more to come with this. I think there's a lot of ramifications, and we haven't even heard anything from the German bishops. We've heard mostly from American bishops.
Right.
We haven't heard much from the German bishops at all. So, I'd say more to come. Let's just keep with that same Cardinal Sarah's mentality. Is let's just wait and see what happens. We can talk about it as it happens, and let's just kind of keep letting the situation
but
develop.
Critical thinking, that's the big thing that I think we have to take away with, is that the reactionaries on both sides, whether it's from the MSM side, the mainstream media, and having to deal with all of this disinformation stuff on the virus, for example, like we were talking about earlier with the doctors and this polarization, we see what the results are. I think when it comes to that side, what we don't want is to push away people from actually being able to experience the beauty of the fullness of Catholicism. And so we really want to take things very slowly, because this has to deal with really grave matter. This is souls. And as you said, Joey, for the first 1,500 years, we've had the Mass, and we will continue to have the Mass. And I think that should be a comfort for everyone, just to kind of slow down and say, you know what? This motu proprio has just shown us that motu proprios are able to be, changed and, usurp one another. And
by his will or something. I forget what the Latin translates into, but it's basically just, it's his, what he wants to do now.
So now it's interesting, because we also know this Pope has been very, very sick. And he's very elderly. And just like how the Italians tend to be, they're kind of like piano when it comes to the papacy, because, you know, papacies end and things continue on and the church exists. And I think people have to remember this. Our Lady said at Fatima that her Immaculate Heart will triumph, but we aren't the ones who are the saviors of the church, right? She only gave us two things that we needed to do: say the rosary, pray the rosary, and do penance. And so now is a time of penance. It's kind of forced penance for many people. It's going to be some suffering. But, you know, let's just keep it in perspective that many Catholics throughout the world haven't ever had the chance to attend traditional Latin Mass, let alone many haven't been able to go to Mass because of persecution. So we unite with them and the broken body of Christ on the cross during this time. And we will endure because Our Lady said we will. So I hope that that is some kind of balm. But I think, you know, critical thinking, that is what the church has always taught, is using our higher faculties. Don't let the devil and his, you know, agent provocateurs utilize our, you know, motions to usurp our reason. This is the time for clear-headed thinking. And like you said, Joey, like means between the extremes. Last thoughts?
Yeah, so I know there's a few more things we want to talk about after the break, and I know we're coming up on the break now. But yeah, you know, it's really interesting, and I think there's going to be only time will tell. And it's interesting to have to live in Italy and kind of see this. That the papacy used to be the papal states here, used to be its own nation, right? So they were a lot more in contact with the authority of the Pope and what it meant for their daily lives. So a lot of Italians here just kind of like, all right, okay, we'll see what happens, and a lot of them are just, we'll wait it out. We'll see what happens. And I think there's a lot of Catholics and a lot of people that feel the same way. Like, okay, let's just see what happens. We'll let the situation develop. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, but you don't have to brush your teeth right away, right? So, you know, when a lot of this stuff starts to happen, and we'll talk about it a little bit more after the break, but you know, there's a lot of information that comes out. There's a lot of things that are going to keep happening, and just be mindful of the information that you're taking in and you're consuming.
Right.
Yeah, so that's it. So, you know, when we come back, we will continue the rest of this conversation, talk a little bit more. We'll talk about some disinformation, and a few more stories, some lighthearted stories to kind of round out the week, and that'll do it for us. So stick around for more Intersections with Bree Dail and Joey Meugniot, and we'll catch you after the break.
Catholics claim that the Pope is the visible principle and foundation of Christian unity. And the reason for this claim is that Jesus made Peter as such. But what's our evidence? First, Jesus makes Peter the rock upon which he builds his church in Matthew 16:18. And since you can't separate the structure from the foundation on which the structure is built, it follows that wherever Peter is, there's the true church of Christ. Luke 22:31-32 is another text. Jesus singles Peter out and promises to protect him in faith and commands him to strengthen the brethren. Peter's job was to keep the apostles united in faith. And if the apostles wanted to benefit from Jesus' prayer of protection, they had to stick with Peter. We can benefit from this unity in faith as well. We stick with Peter's successor, the Pope. I'm Carlo Broussard with the ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Years ago, when I started acting, modeling, and singing in Mexico, my Catholic faith was not the center of my life. It took me many years to discover that success, fame, money, and all the pleasures of the world were not going to fulfill me. I got to a point in my life where I thought I had everything, but I realized something was missing. Thankfully, I began a faith journey that brought me back to God and home to the Catholic Church. You can too.
Discover more at CatholicsComeHome.com.
And welcome back to Intersections with Bree Dail and Joey Meugniot. I'm Joey Meugniot. And we're, first segment, we talked a little bit about some secular news, some things that are happening at the White House, some kind of concerning media and governmental coercion. I don't know, if coercion, some they're linking arms and trying to stamp out what they would consider misinformation or disinformation. Then we talked about a story that we kind of led into a few weeks ago with this modus proprio and what it might mean for you. And I know before we finish this off, I want to, there's, for the lay people, I think that's really what's the most important part of all of this is just really that, you know, what you come away with is it's really up to your bishop, which is a good thing. It's a good or bad thing depending on your bishop, but it allows them some modicum of input into what happens within their diocese, which is, you know, for someone that believes in little r republicanism, you know, that's nice to have people that are local that know you or know their parishes, know their diocese, have a little bit more input on it. So, you know, I will say that there is some of that. The whole conferring with the Vatican thing is
and who also benefit from tithes or withdrawal of tithes. You know, there's something, Joey.
They know their people. They know their flock the best, right? I mean, that's the whole
right.
The whole
I mean,
purpose,
you would
the whole
think.
point.
Right, you would think. And here's the thing with the tithing, because I think it's really important. People were saying that they wanted to know more about the rumors. They need the reports of rumor documents before they come out because they need to prepare. And when I kind of pressured for, like, what are you preparing? Because again, remember, we're in a monarchy here. This isn't a democracy, despite like how some on the left and on the right want to, you know, activate sometimes. So my sense was, so what are you preparing for? What does that mean? And, you know, I received so that we can resist. I don't know exactly what that means, but I do know that some of the practical resistance that has taken place well before this has been on tithing. And we've seen the results of that. Tithing is way down during the shutdowns of the churches throughout the last year. People have said, why should I tithe if I can't even go to Mass? And so I think it's important.
Question.
It's the one thing that I think the faithful have outside of prayer is we're not going, you don't want to permit us the Mass of Ages? Okay. We're not going to tithe. We're going to tithe to monasteries that support it. We're going to tithe directly to priests who support it. We're not going to tithe to the bishops. We're not going to tithe to the dioceses. And recall, we're still dealing with financial and sexual abuse scandals. So I think the bishops in the United States, at least, have heard that, because we've seen this whole year of the Eucharist that has now developed from the USCCB, and we've seen some real action from bishops. There was a report out this week, and I'm not going to name the senator, but a state senator was denied the Eucharist for his pro-abortion stance, and then he moved to another parish, and the same like another priest, and that was by his bishop. And then he moved to another parish thinking he could just kind of work around the bishop. And the priest said, no, I'm not going to give you communion. So that gives you a sense that these things actually work when you present in such a way where, like you're saying, look, we're not going to tithe. Follow the gospel. Follow what you're supposed to be as shepherds, right? So I think that's a point. But however, we still have to realize that we are in a monarchy, and
yeah, I mean, but it comes
sometimes
to your
it's
money,
important
though.
to just
yeah, go ahead.
well, no, sometimes it's important to just put your head down sometimes, you know, and pray and work and wait, just like you were saying in the break before with the Italians. They're like piano, you know. Go ahead, Joey.
Just wait it out. And I think there's the other aspect, especially as Americans, we tend to put our money where our mouth is, right? So we won't buy products from companies that we don't particularly like. We won't do business with companies or, you know, small businesses locally that that don't align. You're seeing a lot more people align their purchasing power with their value system, and there's more to this, and we could probably talk this on another show, a later show, but there's the value systems, right? We're starting to see kind of Americans break down and like, what are my values? What do I even want to be teaching my kids? What is this value? What value system do I want to? So I you know, there's a lot of these kind of deep conversations that people have just glossed over for 2, 3, 4 generations. You're talking 40, 50, 60 years. People have just kind of assumed, and they haven't really had a long, deep conversation about it. And I've said this on the show before, and it's one of the topics, and we touched on it a little bit earlier because we talk about religion and politics quite a bit. It's one of those two topics are supposed to be taboo. They're supposed to be things you don't talk about, right? And I'm of the opposite opinion. I think we need to talk more, especially around the dinner table. Talk to your friends, like your families and your kids and things about these topics, so they understand
civilly,
where you're coming from, and they understand
logically,
what's going on. What's
not emotionally.
Especially when it comes to tying your moral values, your value system with actions that you take in your daily lives with your faith. There's a connection between all of those things. It's not just like check boxes and things we say. There's some meaning.
It's how you should live, and it's one of those things too, Joey. As we're coming up to the close, that I think it really is necessary for people to remember. The fruits, by the fruits you shall know them. And I think this is the time to really see whether or not we can respond to grace during a time of suffering. Because there are a lot of people watching us. There are a lot of people who are kind of on the fence. Are they Catholic? Are they not Catholic? By the fruits you shall know them. And one of the biggest fruits that I feel can develop out of this is simple joy, just simple joy. And I think we have to be really critical in the way that we approach information. Don't accept anything less than 100% accuracy, especially when it comes to something like as grave as whether it's, having to deal with the liturgy or sex abuse or financial scam. You want to make sure that the information that you have and that you're providing is accurate, so that people trust you by that. And it's not about you, but about that. And it's the same thing. Your fruits will show your honesty and your perseverance and your endurance during this time. So last thoughts, Joey?
So you touched on a topic there that I think we're going to talk. I'll just tease this for next week. I think I want to talk more about this next week, because there's been a lot of developments. And because of this modus proprio that came out, we didn't talk about it at all. And that's the charges that have been laid at the Vatican. And so, it's interesting when we talk about financial scandals. There's a lot of financial scandals. I feel like we talk about scandal in the Catholic Church like they're synonymous almost. They're connected, very well connected. But this is turning into a real thing. It's not just hushed whispers and this might happen and that might happen and this bishop and this cardinal. They've actually charged people now. So
they have charged Cardinal Beichu, who I'm in contact with. So I have I have a story coming out explaining this with the Epoch Times, hopefully this week too. Again, making sure that we're getting it right, correct, the information correct, giving Cardinal Beichu the chance to speak for himself. Not a lot of people are doing that. So,
and I think this is a good example of what we're talking about here. I was just saying, there's things that are going on out there. We're going to tell you what's going on. And then as we get more information, we'll continue to talk about the information and give you some analysis and our thoughts on that particular information. But, next week, I think we should definitely to talk about it. There's a lot of details and a lot of new things that have happened. And people have been talking about financial scandal at the Vatican for forever now. And there's actually stuff to talk about
rumors,
without
now
being
there's physical.
Exactly. But now there's actually things to talk about where it's not just whispers and rumors and innuendo and things like that. So, we're kind of coming up on the last few minutes we have here. So, if you haven't, liked or followed this or shared it around, please make sure you do so. We would greatly appreciate it. And it's been a few weeks since we've been on, but we're going to try and come at you with a more of this style of show where, we get a little bit more in depth. And I think this formula has been working out pretty well for those of you that listen.
Let us know.
Like it's been, if it's not and you hate it, just let us know. If you're, I just want you to talk about funny cat videos and memes and stuff for an hour, then we can do that too. But it seems like this is well taken. So I think next week we'll probably spend a better part of the show talking about the financial investigation and what's going on with that. Bree has a lot of stuff coming out, so keep your eyes peeled for.
Jonathan Rumi is coming to Rome.
Yes, he is. He's coming to Rome.
Yes.
Bree, and we could talk about the next week and see kind of what plans you've got. We'll put that in our
I've got a
segment.
date.
So we've got dates and times, and Bree's got a plan. So we'll talk about that next week. So make sure you come back around, and I'm sure something. It's the world has lots of news. I'm sure something else will happen between now and then. But yeah, I think that if you take nothing else away from this, just wait. Get all your information, then decide how you feel about it and what you think about it, and then just let the situation develop. Not all things impact your daily life, but this particular one with the modus proprio probably impacted more people than normally does when we talk about news out of the Vatican. So attack things with logic, attack things with humility, and that's what we will give you here as well. We endeavor to make sure that you get fair and open and honest communication lanes from us. So that's about it. I don't know that we've got anything else to say. I think we pretty much talked ourselves out on that one. So thank you for joining us this week. It's been nice to be back on after a long break, and we will continue bringing you really interesting stories, things that we find interesting, things that we hope you find interesting, that you can talk about with your friends and family. And that's it. It's all I got for the rest of the week. So if we...
Yes, God bless you all. And thank you for holding us accountable, communicating with us, keeping us informed as well. Keep sending us, especially myself, screenshots of letters from your bishops, links from your bishops as well as we start to see this roll out. It's really important to keep people informed, let people form their own opinions. And I think that that's the most important thing that Joey and I have to offer to you all is an element of information and unbiased as much as possible. So God bless you all. Take care. Be well. Be peaceful. Endure. That's what our faith does.
Yep, absolutely. All right, guys. Have a great rest of your week. God bless, and we will catch you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, same bat place. Until then, this is Joey Meugniot and Bree Dail of Intersections. Have a great rest of your week.
God bless.
Okay.
Okay, we're off.
Cool. We're good?
We're good.
All right.
Outstanding.
I was gonna, good show, really good show.
Thanks.
I was gonna ask Adrian to see if he wanted to jump on.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hang out. I can hang out for a minute.
Okay.
Not in a hurry. Let me open this door, though, before I turn this room into a sweatbox.
Okay.
People are asking for the ability to share this out, too. So we'll have to put it up really quickly, I think.
Okay.
People are asking for what? Sorry.
They're asking to share it out. So
Share what out?
to the show. So I guess I'm going to have to
Oh, cool.
go back to editing. So whenever Adrian comes back on, I'll just tell him, like, send me. Sorry.
All the
I'm
shows that you've never edited yet?
I'm going to do this one and try to backtrack. I seriously, like.
What you said about the last show.
I literally have been trying to do like all of the Jonathan stuff by myself, Joey, like the itinerary, everything by myself. Plus, like, now I'm going to be doing siege rolls. Handling siege rolls.
Hello, Adrian. Are you there?
Howdy. You hear me?
Hello.
Yeah,
Hey, bro.
yeah, we can hear you.
Awesome. I'm hearing myself.
You can hear back, like.
Yeah, I'm hearing an echo.
I didn't get a chance to check on Facebook or anything, so
I was watching on YouTube. It sounded fine.
okay, good.
It's probably coming